In this experiment, you're going to practice a number of common experimental techniques. You'll perform a liquid-liquid extraction, you'll use a separatory funnel, and you'll be using a chemical drying agent. While you'll be looking up specific information related to chemical safety, at this point I'd like to point out that whenever you're using chloroform outside of a fume hood, you need to keep it covered either with a watch glass or a beaker or something in order to prevent evaporation of that chloroform into the air. To start the experiment, we need to make some instant coffee. You should tear off the mass of a beaker and then weigh 1 teaspoon of instant coffee into the beaker and record the mass. Once you've done this, dissolve the instant coffee in approximately 50 milliliters of distilled water. You can just measure this using the graduations on the beaker, because the volume used isn't that important. At this point, you should transfer your coffee solution into a 250 milliliter separatory funnel. And then, at a fume hood, add a 15 milliliter portion of chloroform into the separatory funnel. Then you should extract the caffeine into the chloroform layer using either the instructions given in the lab manual or in the video related to using a separatory funnel. After doing your extraction, dispense the chloroform layer into a receiving container, in our case, a 125 milliliter Erlenmeyer flask. And once you've done so, be sure to cover your flask with a beaker. Then perform 2 more extractions using 15 milliliters of chloroform each time, and combine all of your chloroform layers into that same receiving container. At this point, your chloroform extracts will be contaminated with a small amount of water. You should dry your chloroform solution by adding a small scoop of anhydrous magnesium sulfate and then swirling. If the magnesium sulfate does not clump and stays loose, you've added enough magnesium sulfate and you've successfully dried your chloroform extracts. At this point in the experiment, your instructor will show you how to remove the chloroform and recover your caffeine, and then obtain the mass of caffeine in your sample of instant coffee.